Welcome to the broadcast. If you're checking this out on the replay, why don't you go ahead and share it to the groups? I hope that everyone's having a really nice Friday night. We're going to go through some updates on this live stream today. We're going to talk about Australia Day, what happened. We're also going to talk about Pfizer, and we're going to talk about some of China's recent aggressive activity since the inauguration of the new president of the United States. So I'll just give it a second and wait for people to hop on. And I hope everyone's doing really well. I hope everybody enjoyed Australia Day. How about that? There's Hunter there. There's hi. How are we, everyone? There's Kylie tuned in from Western Australia. How you doing? Western Australia, I have not been to before. I'd very much like to visit, hopefully sometime in the near future. We got Daniel Harris tuned in from Canberra. This is great. This is turning into a national channel here. I thought that only people from Victoria were mostly tuning into my Facebook, but I'm really happy to see people tuned in from all around the country. And I think some of the premiers need to remember that Australia is a federation. We've seen this really immature type of competitiveness between state premiers since the inception of this COVID situation, competing for who can impose the toughest restrictions. I think Daniel Andrews wins that one. And of course, we see the craziness with the border closures and lots of people being trapped interstate. So I'm really happy to see so many people tuning in. Hey, Catherine, how are you? Joe, Amanda tuned in from Queensland. Wow, excellent. We're covering most of Australia here. So if you are tuned in, let me know whereabouts you're tuned in from. I'd love to know. Sleepy Joe Beijing Biden says Rex. Well, that's absolutely right. There was quite an interesting little documentary put out not all that long ago that summarized Hunter Biden's dealings with the Chinese Communist Party. That's right, Joe Biden's son. When Joe Biden was vice president under Obama, his son, who had no qualifications, went off to China and found himself in very high up positions. We're talking about sitting on the board of major multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, funds that were acquiring intellectual property, including but not limited to nuclear intelligence from the United States. So now that Joe Biden has become president, we see that the Chinese Communist Party has become emboldened as reflected in their actions in their immediate region. But we'll go through that in a second. There's Anetta there. Kim, how you going? Great to see you. Adelaide, Suzanne, welcome. Marion, Gina, how are you, my friend? Hunter, how you going, my friend? Hunter Trumbull there, a great young patriot from Victoria. Not to be confused with Hunter Biden. Hey, guys. Great to see so many of you here. All right, well, I'm going to get to it. So once again, I'm using the new technology. As you can see, we have the digitized Australian flag behind me. So if I am a little bit slow getting from screen to screen, you'll have to excuse me because I'm still learning about this new technology myself. So let's get through it. Let's get to it, I should say. So right there, you see the Australia Day parade that took place on Australia Day this week. I was very proud and humbled to be part of this parade. It was great. We had quite a few hundred people show up. And it was really heartwarming, the notion that Daniel Andrews tried to cancel Australia Day, but we the people disregarded what he said, recognizing that he does not hold authority over us. And we took to the streets anyway, and we had our own parade. So anyone that was there, I say congratulations. It was a beautiful day. I definitely felt a lot of unity with my fellow Australians, and it was completely peaceful. And I think we had a great time. And we got a lot of exercise. We went on a great walk from just outside of the Art Centre all the way to St Kilda. So once again, if you were there, good on you for saying no to Daniel Andrews. This man he's out of control. What can I say? He cancelled Australia Day, yet he allowed a protest of thousands of people to go ahead on exactly the same day, demonstrating that this man is not impartial. He's acting with favoritism. Now, if you recall, when you think back last year to some of the lockdown demonstrations, Daniel Andrews, along with Victoria Police, did everything they could to make sure those protests did not go ahead for the purpose of supposedly enforcing the Chief Health Officer's directions. Now, it's important to point out that we're still in a so-called state of emergency right now, and it is supposedly still the job of Victoria Police to enforce the so-called Chief Health Officer's directions. Yet on Australia Day, we did not see them enforcing those directions. Now, why do you think that was? So take a look at this. I went to the Invasion Day rally in the morning because I was curious to see what the turnout would be. And my estimate is there was approximately 3,000 people. As you can see in the photo that should be displayed on your screen right now, you can see Victoria Police standing there quite casually whilst thousands of people participated in the protest. Now, I want to start by pointing out that I've got no problem with people protesting, even if it's something like Invasion Day. Protest and free speech is, of course, paramount to a free country and living in a democratic society. The day that free speech is taken away is the day that democracy is gone and is not coming back. So I've got no problem with anyone protesting for whatever they feel they need to protest for. But yet, when you look at the photo below from Freedom Day, you see Victoria Police assaulting members of the public. Now, some people say, well, it was different back then, but I argue it was absolutely not different. The Chief Health Office, the so-called Chief Health Officer's directions were being enforced by Victoria Police back then. We're still in a state of emergency, yet for some reason Victoria Police has chosen not to enforce the Chief Health Officer's directions. At the Invasion Day rally, I actually approached a member of Victoria Police and I asked him, I said, hey, are you going to be enforcing the Chief Health Officer's directions today? What do you think he told me? I got some type of smug answer. He said, oh, we'll see how we go. And I think that it's very apparent that the orders are coming from above, filtering down through the government, through the bureaucracy, and the police are simply following suit. Now, the job of the police, well, I thought the job of the police was to enforce the law without fear or favor, without prejudice and without favoritism. But what they have demonstrated is that they selectively choose when to enforce the law and when to enforce the Chief Health Officer's directions, which can only lead us to believe they're acting in complete bias. Now, I know it may seem like I'm pointing out the obvious, okay, but if you can relay this message to maybe some family members or some friends who may not be up to date with the situation and what's going on, then I say that's a good thing. And the more people we can wake up to this, these discriminatory practices, the better it is. Now, I'm going to show you a tweet right here, which I found pretty interesting. This is Tim Smith, so here's the Liberal member for Q. I'm going to read it to you guys. Victoria Police, no doubt directed by Andrews, are not enforcing Cho directives which state 100 people can gather outside at a time. Remember when a mum was arrested in her home for a Facebook post about a protest, or when the riot squad was sent to Queen Vic Market? Consistency, question mark. So it's a pretty interesting post here from Tim Smith, heavily implying that Victoria Police are under the command of Daniel Andrews. Now, maybe this time last year, people would have thought such a comment would be preposterous. I think I said that word wrong, whatever. Or out of this world, I should say, and that the police would act without favoritism. But what we've seen since the inception of this COVID situation is, of course, policing that is consistent with the policy agenda of Daniel Andrews, including the harsh lockdowns and, of course, the suppression of our basic dignity and our basic human rights. So I think that Tim Smith is probably on the money here, because we can only conclude, based on this behaviour which is not impartial from the police, that they are indeed directed by Andrews. So I think that's a very relevant point that Tim is making there. Another interesting point here is he states that 100 people can gather outside at a time. Now, at the Invasion Day protest, the instructions were that people could gather in groups of 100. Now, that, of course, is impossible to enforce. It's impossible to count. I made an inquiry several months ago regarding my own protests, where at the time I think public gatherings were limited to, it was either 10 or 20 people. And I inquired with Victoria Police whether or not we could have multiple groups of 10 and 20 in the same region if they were separated. And they told me no. They said it could only be 10 people in a specific area at one time. Now, I'm not aware that that rule has changed. Well, maybe it's changed for some people, but not for others. So Tim Smith correctly pointing out inconsistencies there with Victoria Police, and the fact that Victoria Police are picking and choosing when to enforce the directions and who they target. All right, so I'm going to just jump back to Facebook here and read some comments. There's John there saying, why does the government pay the police commissioner $500K a year? Judy says, can we test this by another get together and see what Daniel Andrews is doing. Margaret says that police seem to be paid hired hands. Well, that's certainly what it seems like. It seems like Victoria Police is acting as nothing more than an enforcement arm for the non-evidence-based abusive policy of the Daniel Andrews government. And that's what it is. It's non-evidence-based. Even the World Health Organization published a statement the other day urging on leaders around the world to reconsider how they interpret PCR results out of essentially fear of false positives. And of course, what do false positives lead to? It leads to lockdowns. It leads to the erosion of our rights. It leads to the destruction of businesses, children being kept out of schools. And God can only imagine what type of mental health detriments to society we're going to be living with for a very long time. All right, so there's that. All right, what do we have next? Pfizer, that's right. As I'm sure you've seen throughout the media, Pfizer has been rolled out, of course, in the UK and around Europe, and has provisional clearance or something to that effect with the Therapeutic Goods Administration, which nobody doubted. Of course, the PCR tests were pushed through the Therapeutic Goods Administration, courtesy of the Health Department and Greg Hunt, without typical scrutiny, without asking any serious questions regarding the effectiveness of a PCR test to detect the virus referred to as SARS-CoV-2. So now, of course, there's another provisional approval here for the Pfizer vaccine, and it looks like the rollout of this particular vaccine is going to be sooner than perhaps anticipated, with the Morrison government committing to 10 million doses for Australia. Now, I'm creating a presentation on Pfizer as a corporation, not aimed at really looking at vaccines and the argument for and against vaccines, but more so looking into the corporate rap sheet of Pfizer and asking ourselves the question, which is, can we trust this organization based on their past behavior and based on their past unethical practices and the many lives which have been destroyed as a direct result of what this corporation has done. So I'm going to give you a little bit of just a little bit of a teaser. I've got some notes right here. I'm going to read to you just a few pointers of the presentation so you'll know what to expect. And I plan to have this all done within the next few days. So I'm just going to be reading from my notes here. According to Forbes, Pfizer is the 49th largest public company in the world with a market value of $212.8 billion US dollars. So to put that in perspective, if Pfizer was a country, it would rank as the 48th richest nation in the world if we're looking at GDP. This is a very powerful corporation. Pfizer is also one of the single largest political lobbyists in the United States and routinely spends millions of dollars lobbying US lawmakers in order to influence advantageous political policy that best serves Pfizer's corporate interests. In fact, there was a WikiLeaks cable that was published in the past that showed Pfizer was actively lobbying the US government regarding certain laws pertaining to their drugs in New Zealand. So specifically, Pfizer wasn't happy with the laws in New Zealand as it presented further challenges to flooding the New Zealand market with their drugs. Here's a few pointers about the vaccine. In Israel, 12,000 citizens tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 after being inoculated with the Pfizer vaccine. In Norway, health experts are investigating the deaths of 33 people who died after taking the vaccine. And of course, there's been multiple deaths. Many of them have been elderly, but it's important to point out that regarding all of these deaths, Pfizer and other governments have made excuses such as, well, these people were old or these people had pre-existing health conditions. So it's interesting to point out that when somebody dies or suffers a severe allergic reaction from one of these vaccines, the blame is on something else. But should somebody be reported to have died from COVID, there's no more questions asked. There's no investigations. So I think it's really important that everyone pays attention to that very important disparity. I'm going to give you a couple of examples here of some prior behavior of Pfizer that may lead some consumers to question whether or not this is an organization they want to deal with. In 1992, Pfizer agreed to settle lawsuits in relation to the sale of an artificial heart valve that was implicated in 300 deaths due to faulty components. Next here, is in regards to the antidepressant called Zoloft. Since its release in 91, hundreds of people have filed lawsuits against Pfizer, accusing the company of marketing Zoloft as being safe and aggressively pushing the product at pregnant women, despite certain studies indicating that Zoloft causes birth defects. In 2012, Pfizer and its subsidiary Wyeth lost a lawsuit and was forced to pay a total of $1.2 billion of compensation for approximately 10,000 plaintiffs who developed breast cancer as a result of Pfizer deliberately withholding information regarding the risks involved in taking the drug Prempro. So this is just a few snippets. I'm going to have many more examples for you in the presentation. So make sure that you stay tuned and watch my Facebook page because I'm going to be releasing it. I think it's very irresponsible. I just want to point out that the mainstream media really haven't delved into the background corporate rap sheet of this organization and instead are essentially playing the tune of the government agenda. Anyway, I'm just going to have a look at Facebook here, see what's going on with the comments. It's great to have you guys here. Thanks a lot. I can see 200 people tuned in right now. I'm happy that you're here. I hope that everyone's gearing up for a nice weekend. There's Jenny there, Suzanne. Mark says that you won't take the vaccine because most don't need it. And we have Sue posting some information there from the New York Post, and that was regarding what I mentioned before about the deaths in Norway. Shirley said that she saw today that Germany is not going to give the vaccine to anyone over the age of 65. And of course, what this really comes down to is personal choice. So I'm not against vaccines, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I think most reasonable people would agree that whether you take a drug or you don't, it should be completely up to you and your personal choice. Is that fair enough? Is that just a matter of common sense and basic human decency and dignity? I would much prefer to catch the virus SARS-CoV-2 and develop antibodies the natural way. So that's just me, and I should have the right to do that. I should have the right to expose myself to that. What do you guys think? Put that in the comments. Maybe you have a friend or a family member who swears by these corporations, and perhaps you could have a talk to them about it. I mean, would you want to wear a t-shirt from a company that engages in unethical practices overseas? Pfizer has run clinical trials in third world countries. There was a particularly bad case in Africa where several children died as a result of participating in Pfizer trials, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this organization. All right, now moving on. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about China. What we've seen since the inauguration of Joe Biden has definitely been an increase in belligerence from the Chinese Communist Party and by extension the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, that is the Chinese military. Particularly in regards to their neighbors at this stage. So Taiwan, which the Chinese Communist Party declares to be part of China, but of course the people of Taiwan consider themselves an independent nation. Now, flexing their muscle, China has sent, according to many reports, and I'm reading from Breitbart here, record number of warplanes into Taiwanese airspace. So this is definitely sending a message to the United States and a message to the new president that they are willing to act in these belligerent ways and to flex their military muscle. So I'm just going to scroll through this article here. The People's Liberation Army of China sent a record number of warplanes into Taiwan's air defense identification zone on Saturday and Sunday, an intimidating display staged only a few days after the inauguration of President Joe Biden. Let's see here. At the same time, Chinese warplanes were flying near Taiwan. The U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt and its battle group entered the South China Sea, pursuing what the U.S. Navy calls a freedom of navigation operation. All right, so we've been conducting these freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, essentially expressing our opposition to China's claim to the South China Sea. They're building man-made islands. They're expanding their military into the sovereign waters of other countries. It's been ruled so in the international court system, but of course China only respects whatever the policy that comes down through the central government. So China's claiming that they're entering Taiwan airspace. They're implying that it's some type of retaliation to the United States, but really what it comes down to is that China considers Taiwan to belong to China and has actually expressed their intent to invade the country should there not be a complete reunification by, I believe, the year 2040, maybe 2050. Now, it's important to point out that President Trump was very pro-Taiwan, and that during his tenure as president, he actually emboldened. Sorry, I think I've got some issues here. Just give me a second. Yeah, during his tenure as president, he really emboldened the Taiwanese military by signing record military equipment deals over to Taiwan, and really with the anticipation of supporting Taiwanese independence, and also what many considered would be a long-term plan to pave the way for true sovereignty for Taiwan, and perhaps for Taiwan to be internationally recognized as a sovereign nation. These arms sales, of course, angered the Chinese Communist Party that feel entitled to Taiwan. They have ever since the Chinese Civil War in 1949, and they've made absolutely no secret about their intent to take Taiwan by force. Should Taiwan not surrender to the Chinese Communist Party. And as we can see right here, this was reported from just today from Fox News. US urges calm after China tells Taiwan independence means war. So once again, the Chinese Communist Party not at all disguising their intentions, and having that little disregard for US Taiwan policy, that they'll blatantly declare their intent to invade Taiwan and to use military force. So here we go. The US on Thursday called for calm just hours after a top official from China vowed that Taiwan's independence would mean war with Taipei. So that's pretty interesting to point out as well. The Chinese Communist Party acting very emboldened under this quite potentially CCP compromised President Joe Biden. Here's another article right here. This is from Apple Daily, a newspaper run by Hong Kong people. This is moving away from Taiwan to Japan. So China's new law lets Coast Guard fire on foreign vessels, expand sea jurisdiction. So once again, we're talking about disputed territories, this time off the coast of Japan. Now, the Chinese Communist Party, just like Taiwan, just like the South China Sea, has arbitrarily decided that this particular area belongs to them and that they have sovereign rights over these waters and over these islands. Now, this could spell a lot of trouble for Japan, especially with a weak United States. As it says here, China has passed a law, and it's also important to note that in the Chinese Communist Party, there's no debates. Everything comes from the top down. So using the word passed, kind of implies that there was some type of debate, but really these are orders coming from above. China has passed a law that allows its Coast Guard to fire on foreign vessels and expands the area where officials can take enforcement action. Okay, the new legislation to be effective from February 1 is raising concerns in Japan for the threat it may pose to Japanese fishermen and patrolling officers. Okay, so it's important to point out this may not just be Japanese ships. It could be ships from other nations that need to be in those waters, perhaps military patrols, freedom of navigation exercises, and so forth. So if foreign vessels enter seas under Chinese jurisdiction, or Chinese proclaimed jurisdiction to conduct unlawful operations, unlawful, of course, in the eyes of the Chinese Communist Party, and should they refuse to follow orders to stop, refuse the boarding of officials for examination, or fail to listen to warnings, the Coast Guard is authorized to open fire. So make no mistake about it, this is most definitely a declaration of war, and either we're going to see what happens. Will Joe Biden take a strong military stance against the Chinese Communist Party, or will he not? Now I'm just going to have a look here because for whatever reason it looks like my camera has stopped functioning. So please just bear with me for a moment and let's see if it can come back. No, it's definitely not coming back. All right, well, that's all right. You just will not see me for the rest of the broadcast. But that's probably not too bad. You don't have to look at my head. I'll be back on the next broadcast. So I can still see people tuned in. I want to say I'm really happy to see 227 people here. I hope you like the new format. I'm planning to broadcast a lot more often to cover the news and to look at stories that are otherwise largely not covered or completely ignored by the Australian mainstream media. In my opinion, the media here in Australia has committed a terrible injustice against the people with their one-sided journalism and their reporting, which can only be described to appear as state-run media, often parroting the policy agenda of the government, the Daniel Andrews government, never challenging it, never challenging the PCR tests and the lockdowns. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to finish up with one last thing over here. And this is something that I'm really excited about. So it's semi-live right now. So this is my new website, mcjreport.com. I want to step this media operation up to a new level. And I've made the beginning. So it's still propagating, but you should be able to visit the website by typing in mcjreport.com. Now I'm going to give you a little tour of the website to give you a bit of an overview of what it is and what my goals are for the site. And the main goal is for it to be an important tool of information for the people of Australia, but also for people around the world. Anyone that finds use in this information is who the website is intended for. So let me just have a little bit of a scroll through. So obviously the first thing you see here is subscribe to our free newsletter. That's right. So you can enter your email address here. I don't need any other information, just your email address. And I will send you a free newsletter multiple times a week with stories that are in relation to, as it says here, Australia, specifically our sovereignty, China and the Chinese Communist Party, geopolitics and the current global scandal. So the goal is, of course, is to fill the void and to make up where the Australian mainstream media falls short. So yeah, the website's under development right now. So the website will work as a news aggregator service. So let's see, if we click on the news button here, we've got links. So the main topics here, COVID-19, or should I say the global scandal, Australia, China, USA, and the world. Okay, so everything that you should hopefully need to know about these topics. I'll be uploading my own original content under MCJ Reports. You know that I released a presentation regarding the PCR test. So the Pfizer presentation will be uploaded, and it will be a bit of a knowledge base, and I hope to expand this website and get other people involved in content creation. So perhaps if you're interested in being involved in this new operation, you could reach out to me. There'll be a resources section, which is coming soon, of downloadable documents. One of the first documents that comes to mind is the complaint from Sanjeev to the International Criminal Court regarding the allegation of Daniel Andrews and crimes against humanity. So documents that are important. I'm also working with some scientists who are writing some reports on face masks. So this is simply a section where you can download information and read through it in your own time. But in the meantime, you can head over to mcjreport.com, just pop in your email address and sign up to the free newsletter. And I'll email you a few times a week with some information that hopefully you find very useful. So yeah, tell your friends, tell your family. We really need to take a certain stance that we may not be on Facebook and social media forever. So that's why I've taken the step in developing this website so that we can stay in touch, so that the message can keep going out there. Also, by signing up, you'll be made aware of public events and demonstrations and things to that effect. There's a little login area, so you can create an account, you can create a profile and comment on articles and posts. So it's all pretty interactive. This is definitely in its beta phase, so I do anticipate there will be some issues with the website, but I hope to have those ironed out relatively soon. So that's about it. That is just about it. I'm the Invisible Man. I know. I wish that didn't happen. I'm gonna have to look at my camera. So that's about it for today, guys. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. And if you're new to my page, go ahead and click the like button. Head over to mcjreport.com, pop your email address in on the homepage, and sign up for the free newsletter. And that's about it, guys. So thank you for watching. God bless. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.